Order. Kara, are you ready? Great. And Terry? All right. Welcome to the Intergovernmental Committee meeting. Today is January 19th. I am Director Ely Lowry, and I get to chair this committee, which is fabulous. Joining me today, we have
Director Hollins.
All right. Director Green, are you online? No. Okay. Can we have staff introduce yourselves?
We're allowing them.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
John, do you want to start?
I am John Lyons, former public school study.
I'm Kirsten Calendar, assistant to PPS.
Dan Young, Chief Operating Officer.
Anna White, Director of Planning and Policing.
Okay. And again, we have our fabulous God of all tech. I don't know what your official title is, Terry.
That's right.
Yeah, here with us, and we have our board secretary, Kara Raja, and board manager, Roseanne Coe. And then online, Courtney, you want to go first? John?
John Eames, Eames Consulting, lobbyist in government affairs for PPS.
Cassie?
Same as John, Eames Consulting.
All right, excellent. John here, are you John with an H or just J-O-N?
J-O-H-N.
J-O-H-N. Okay, so you can be John with an H and you can be John without an H.
Or Mr. Lyons.
Mr. Lyons, Mr. Lyons, we can do that. All right. Well, our big and only real agenda item today is to talk about the future of Harriet Tubman Middle School, which I know many people are very anxious to discuss, both because there is this important issue for the health of our children around toxic air and the freeway expansion, and also because of what it means for our Black community to once again be being relocated, and especially for our freeway, and also what it means for our other schools in the area as we look at what that future could be. So I'm not sure which one of you is going to lead us off today. Who would like to start? Mr. Lyons? I just don't want to call him Mr. Lyons. He has, of course, then has to call me Reverend Director.
Well, there we go.
I'm just going to do a quick kickoff. At the board meeting last week, we went over some of the high-level status updates of where we were, talked about the problem statement a little bit, and some efforts to date. Today, what we're going to focus on is schedule, really overall project timeline, and immediate actionable next steps, and really frame around how we think, lay out the plan of how we're going to get from here to there. And it's going to be iterative, and it's going to be fast-paced. And so there's going to be a lot of discussion, there's going to be a lot of conversation. So we want to really just lay out that the crew members be aware of what that plan is. It will change, certainly, as we get into it, but we're going to start with our plan, and we're going to work that plan with us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so what we heard at the board meeting, was that just last week?
Yes.
Wow.
A week ago Tuesday.
That's very hard to believe. These were the key takeaways that we had, so if we're missing anything, we certainly would like to know that. One was adding environmental health to the criteria list, and I would actually add to that as well, safe routes. We really want our students to be able to walk to school without having to cross busy roads or walk through any areas that would be not safe for them. We want to stay within the HTMS catchment area. We would go out of it if a site was like fantastic, perfect, which by the way doesn't exist. But if there was one,
outside is perfect thing.
What's that?
There is a site outside of the catchment area that is perfect size, and
there is.
So Whitaker.
site.
Oh, Whitaker, yeah.
Size, yeah.
Yes, it's just the location of it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, it's a little bit, it's pretty, but yes, it is, yeah, that would be, could we move that? I would be delighted. So transparency is critical and not with our community, of course, and the students and families, but also internally here to make sure we're all on the same page and everybody understands. We have a short time to do something that's a very long-term project that will be here for decades. So really being as transparent as we possibly can is critical. History matters. I've had the pleasure of going to the community meetings, and there's a lot of emotion, understandably, a lot of concern about how this ends up looking, and we need to be really mindful of the history of this community and what's happened there in the past. A new site would be preferred rather than reworking the existing areas that we have. And we want to be able to coordinate the planning with our declining enrollment. I know we're kind of at the beginning of understanding where we're at with the enrollment projections, but we do know that all the schools in this catchment area are at less than 60% occupancy or utilization. So we want to be mindful of not making that problem worse, but trying to make it better. So a lot of sort of background things. So today, well, I'm going to briefly go back to the problem overview because I want to make sure I got some feedback after the board meeting that there was a lack of clarity around the viaduct piece. So I'll explain that a little bit better. And then as Dan said, we're going to go through the schedule and then our next steps. So this is the site. It may be a little bit hard to read from back here, but the yellow and the red are walls. So, and they'll be largely constructed during the summer months, which is great, since we're typically not there. The gray bar though is the viaduct, and that's an elevated freeway. So that construction begins in June of 27. It will go for a year. When that happens, there will also be, and I have the wrong slide there, John, but there will also be access points around the school on both sides, both ends of the school. So you can imagine there's big trucks, and people are drilling for big posts, tiles, and there's people coming in on both ends of that school. So a lot happening there. Does that make sense? Does anybody have a question?
So that's what starts in 23.
27. 23 starts the first wall.
Okay.
So the yellow wall.
That yellow wall shouldn't have too much, will they have access to the property then?
Only during the summertime. We've asked them to only access during the summer, and ODOT, to their credit, has understood that.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the part of construction that will really impact the school starts in summer of 27.
That's correct.
So we're gonna want our students to have a new school to attend starting in fall of 27. Okay.
Interestingly enough, that would be
Excellent. I can make the same
You can
assumption.
totally do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so which sounds like a long time, but it's not, unfortunately. So if we're assuming that that's correct, that that's a true statement, then we get into the schedule piece. And for reference, this is the Kellogg schedule. And remember that with Kellogg, of course, we did not acquire property. We didn't have any land use we had to do. It was a clean site. So this is the schedule that we just did on that middle school. And you'll notice that's 4 years. This is a reminder of what our scenarios are: build new or relocate within our existing facilities. This is the schedule under scenario A, and the reason that this is important is to notice that the property negotiations and some of the due diligence, that has to be done up front. So, we need to get a purchase and sale agreement in place before we can start due diligence.
So we have until April to figure this out.
Well, we do. I mean, we've got lots of time.
Great.
It's not a big deal. And then we would, under the schedule, be running concurrently on our due diligence with land use work if we had that, and planning. So there's some risk involved there. Not horrible, but there is risk, certainly. Scenario B pushes us out a little bit because we don't have the land to deal with, but still, with the scenario B also has the impact of needing to then redistribute students from one of these schools to the other remaining schools. So that there's a lot that goes into that as well, of course.
So if let's say Whitaker is the one we end up doing,
Sure.
Where does that fall between schedule scenario B and schedule scenario A? Is it more like B then?
It's more like B. I would say that's more like B. Dan and John.
Well, it's, with the exception, it doesn't have a procurement piece, but unlike B, so B assumes that one of the existing elementary schools becomes a middle school. And to do that, that second part there is those schools, whatever school that would convert to middle school, those elementary schools would soon have to be redistributed
Right.
somewhere else. So that's what that second piece is. If we
Okay.
did Whitaker, we wouldn't have that.
Right. nor would we have the concurrent work of upgrades or improvements to the existing schools.
Right. If we were to do scenario B, is it more likely that we would tear down one of the existing elementary schools and build a brand new building, or is this more likely a remodel scenario? Does it just really depend on which of the sites if we pick one of them?
I think it definitely will depend. Certainly, the schools that are in the portfolio of that area have varying degrees of size and condition. I'm not sure if there's a scenario where there's a likely tear down. John, if you have any initial thoughts on that?
My instinct is we would modernize, so we would
Okay.
redo.
Just curious. I mean,
New square footage would look like
to make it.
so in addition.
So, I don't know if that's really clear. I want to make sure. Crystal clear.
Okay.
Okay, so we got that. So the takeaways that we have from this is, August 2027, as you mentioned. And with 4 years on planning, design, and construction. So we layer on, obviously, some more time if we are going with scenario A. The in-between scenario, like you were mentioning, obviously would fall in between that somewhere. So, which is an interesting thought.
So I'm just gonna say that when I met the King PTA, they were the ones that mentioned what occurred to me, and they said they didn't feel like what they were hearing from the Tubman families was that the catchment area was a priority for them. But I wonder, have we asked the Tubman families if that catchment area is a priority for them?
I don't think that we have, or Dan, do you want to?
It's not bad.
I was just gonna say, not to my knowledge. I think I am very interested in what the King and Boise, because those will be the students that will be there.
Right,
So those are the kids that will be going.
that makes sense to ask the elementary kids.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to know if, for example, we did Whitaker, is that a showstopper because it's
Right.
farther away, or is that real?
Yeah, I think that's a really important with our community engagement to ask, because I think the board was all saying, we want to keep it in the same catchment area to honor families, to make it close enough to keep it in this historic neighborhood, but Whitaker's not that far. Is Whitaker considered in Albina? This is my
No.
terrible geography of
Oh, yeah,
Portland.
no, it's way outside the outline area.
If you ask me about Selwood, and sometimes I get Eastmoreland and Westmoreland.
Yeah.
Sort of
it's-
directly
yeah,
In between them?
Yeah, they're
Right, no, yeah, Whitaker's not in, is.
okay.
no,
I didn't
yeah,
think so,
outlying
but
area.
yeah.
But I think that is a great question to ask those elementary school, families, is that an issue? Is that, that a possibility? Because, with doing that, we'll have potentially three middle schools within a mile of each other.
Right, so it may not be
That's true.
ideal.
So, right, so, is that, you're looking at equity issues, as far as having three, on that side? Or is it, walkability, right? If you got kids that's going to middle school, it's a lot better than doing an elementary school over there, because travel so
Right.
far, but I think it would be a great question to make sure we ask our elementary school families to say, hey, is the Whitaker site, is that an issue? Is that an issue? And then if it is what other remedies do we have as far as how we bus kids up there and things like that? So, but I think that's a great question to ask.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I didn't even consider Whitaker because it's outside the catchment. But I think it's this, I don't think Whitaker's ideal because it's not close enough, but if we're looking at moving one of our elementaries, and we've heard a lot of community pushback, it's like, how do we, and there's not this ideal plot of land for us to buy, and we can't do eminent domain, right? Or we don't want to.
We don't, we probably could, but I have a feeling that would not be possible.
Yeah, I don't think that would be popular either, so,
And then we do it for Irvington Park. I mean, I'm just saying,
You're gonna get us.
I mean, no ideal space.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
16 acres, so.
Yeah. So, but just, looking at, like I said, those families and seeing, what, they're okay with doing, so. But they're definitely looking at those elementary families to see this one.
Yeah, it would be interesting to get community feedback. How would they feel if middle school is not in Alpine?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
does that mean to people? Is that?
yeah, because that may be something that the community says, no, we really want
We
the
got
school to be
people
in
here.
Albina, but,
Or they may say it's the lesser of evils and we'll take it.
And I
Right.
even like doing it, even if we do a new site, how would that affect the low enrollment that we have at those schools currently? Is there automatically grow,
we've seen,
Will we have the empty schools later on as projections for kids dwindle? We'll have empty schools, so that's another thing we have to look at, and are we avoiding the inevitable anyway?
We're backing ourselves into a corner where
Right.
we have to make a really tough decision.
yeah, that would be.
So there's the bottom line.
Okay.
We got until May, so we gotta be cooking on this thing.
4 months, okay.
To the degree that we don't get there, we're certainly at risk of being able to get the kids out of government by 2027.
So when you say identify the site, if I may, is that identify the site to the legislators that we have to have the site identified by that time, or?
It's about the construction schedule.
So, if, for instance, they don't allocate money in February, then what happens?
There's a lot of ancillary questions that will come up and decisions will have to make, including funding. So how much will the legislature allocate? How much will it cost? If it's not enough, where will those funding come from? So we've got a little bit of chicken and egg right now with our scope, our schedule, and then our funding. They're all interrelated and none of them are related, but yes, so all those are components that we're juggling.
But this schedule is based on just physical ability to construct a building.
That's correct.
Correct. So identifying the site in May so we can then enter into negotiations and due diligence so we can procure that property in time to design.
And with that identifying the site piece and with the legislation piece, and I'm assuming whoever is talking to negotiate that, are we going to be, is that going to be set in stone if we set a site, if let's just say, hey, we're going to use this site, but something comes up, we have the ability to shift or pivot, another site becomes available or something like that?
Are you speaking in terms of the legislature and the
Yeah.
money? Yeah, Courtney, did you hear the question?
It was a little muddled, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I've got a first grader home this week, so I'm kind of tag teaming here. Director Hollins, can you say your question again? I heard bits of it.
Yeah, so my question is, when we're dealing with the legislature about the funding piece, is there going to be some kind of caveat or addendum in there to where if we identify a site now and later on another site might possibly be available or a better site comes up, will we be able to pivot and use that money for a different site?
It's a good question, and so just to restate it for anybody else on the call that didn't hear, if we select the site and we are able to access money through the legislative process, and then we identify another site that might be better later on, can we still use the money? I don't know the answer exactly, but I know right now, and I was just on a call a little bit ago about legislative strategy with the governor's office. What we're trying to do is have a little bit of assurances tied to whatever the proposal is in February session that allows for some flexibility, knowing that we probably can identify a site before, mid-February, and but also making sure legislators are comfortable allocating funding to something that is, unknown at this point in terms of the site. So I think there will be some flexibility there, as long as, we are working in good faith to identify a location. And then, the resources, there is always that possibility that we ask for a certain amount of money and we need a little bit more and we don't get it. I think, that's another conversation, but I do feel strongly that we can build that into whatever proposal we bring forward.
Thank you. Do we have a price or a price that we're looking at as far as to do this, whether building a new school or modernizing another school?
Yeah, we put together some really high level estimates. And for example, in high level, so when we were looking at a new site, we gave a range of what the property purchase price might be, so they'll obviously depend on the site, how big, what it is. And then we used an assumed size of the school based upon Kellogg, and we had one of our professional cost estimators give us $1 per square foot. So we just have a really high level. And then similarly, we were looking at doing upgrades to our schools. We've taken a really generic look. Again, we don't know which sites. We can't say this site needs a roof and this site doesn't. So we've given a pretty broad range, but both of those scenarios are well over 100.
So just in case we haven't made it perfectly clear, we're in the red box. And the red box is shrinking fast. So this actually, what I like about this slide is it gives you scenario A and B together. So you can kind of see what the difference in that is. So this is the last slide, and I'll be quiet. But this is how we're proposing to do the next steps. On the first, we'll issue a due diligence document. We've been doing a lot of work in facilities around potential sites and what might we need to do, and I think we need to communicate that a little bit more clearly, and so we're working on that. We'd like to have ongoing board work sessions so that we can begin to narrow this down. So mid-February, a work session, narrow to 5 sites, and then we would come back with our due diligence, get down to 3 sites. We're slowly but surely moving down to hopefully 2 sites by April. So, and we may be able to go faster than that depending on what the choices are and the feedback is. But I mean, if everybody says, "Hey, great, Whitaker, shoot, we're off to the races." So this is what we're proposing to do. So would appreciate feedback on that process.
Well, I think that community engagement piece is really important to really get a clear picture from, I think, the elementary schools, those students will be the ones going to Tubman when this timeline hits. Really hear from them about what will be the least awful. Right? I mean, I think if we could just leave Tubman where it was and maybe not have Wi-Fi anymore. But that's my radical leftist side coming out. What is the best next option?
And you never should say things you hadn't thought about before, right? Special and board members, but it's going to do it anyway. Is there a way? I'm trying to think if there's like maybe a community group or to get feedback. We get people's feedback and we absorb that, right? We don't kind of engage too much in dialogue. I wonder if we could pull together some community leaders or families or. I don't know.
Like maybe like a community forum.
Well, I think our community
Yeah.
engagement staff,
Yeah.
I mean, is that where can we pull them into some of this? I mean, I don't know.
I think we would have to.
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful to do something like that to me. And I think getting them together instead of going to the individual sites is okay. But I think by doing that, then we get this sense of other versus them and we protecting our school,
Right.
going to individuals. I think if we bring them together and say, hey, this is the issue that we have, let's look at the solution. Then I think we get a lot more good ideas and buy-in from the decisions that made because the decisions that being made as a collective versus, oh, well, this group said they had the loudest voice, so they got
Right.
that. I think if we could do something like that, I think that would, or maybe you invite the PTAs of each of those groups together
That's a good.
and kind of really have that dialogue, bring it to the table, and sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Right,
Before
right.
mid-February.
Yeah, but doing something like that, so that way now we're really having dialogue and we're coming up with solutions that everybody can try to buy into, and then we don't get that, we try to save our school, we try to save our school, we try to save our school,
Right.
and all that.
And we're doing something to the community.
Right.
I'm really uncomfortable with that feeling.
Yeah,
And I also think within like conversation, because some people are more outgoing and more likely to speak in that. One of the things we did when we did the vision was like dot exercises, and of course the community engagement people are experts in this, but I
Yeah.
think some of the stuff like that you gave to the board to weigh in on, would you rather have it, how important is it to you that the site is in the Tubman catchment? But your dot where because I think again, my experience with some of our community forums is sometimes there's a few characters and very passionate advocates that speak up a lot, and then we don't hear from some of the other voices. So that's what our community engagement people are expert at is creating places where we have a variety of avenues of input. But I think getting I don't know how we do that. I mean, it's not really the board's job to direct staff, but I think this is a critical moment when that community engagement is going to be really vital.
Well, Courtney and I talked about that.
Okay.
Talked about what would be the next step for it.
Yeah. Right, and yeah, provide for support there. Because I like that idea. I feel like it needs to be more of an exchange.
yeah,
And ground everybody in the understanding that there's a problem.
right.
And the-
how do we-
Yeah, the King PTA did a great job there. I know you talked to them, right?
He was awesome, the King.
Yeah, and I did like a thing with them online, and I think Julia talked to them, I mean, some of us talked to them online as well as in person, so I think, we've definitely heard some input, but continuing to hear more and from a diversity of voices is good.
Yeah, I think so as well. And then, I mean, clearly, that's not the end of it.
Right.
It's like having a baby, right? That's just the beginning.
No, I thought by April it would be good. And
You thought it would be under construction?
Yeah.
I don't know why we haven't opened it.
Right. We still have to figure out the location.
Oh, well. Anyway, so that's the end of this captivating slideshow.
So once we have the site located, we'll do the DAG piece and all, like, there'll be community input to design and those other pieces
Sure.
as well per our standard sort of facilities creation process.
Yeah, that process.
I think it's getting to the site selection and that's where we really need the community to kind of help guide us.
And I think some things like at Kellogg, having the old entryway over the library, some of that history, I think will be really important as we look at Tubman and how do we keep it Tubman, even if it's not at the same location, to preserve some of that really important history. And even if it's not in Albina, how do we tell the story of Albina, tell the story of the freeway, tell the story of that school community? Because I think that what I've heard from people is identifying as someone who went to Tubman, that's a really important family piece for a lot of folks.
I think that's really important, and I keep hearing, don't close King School, and who said we were gonna close King School? What we were talking about was maybe making it middle school, not closing it.
Right.
But I get the emotion around, the parents. If we do go that direction, we're gonna have to figure out some renaming, probably at some other schools, which is doable, certainly. But I think that's preserving that history and honoring that history is good. I appreciate that.
I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a thing from the King community that said that they believe that, it might have been the Oregonians, that they believe that theirs was the first school name for Dr. King.
I heard that too,
That it was
right
like-
after his assassination.
Yeah, they were like one of the first to.
Yeah.
First school in the country.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine us ever taking away that name.
No.
I really
Yeah,
don't
actually,
know that.
they even, that school was even named before Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Yeah, oh, well before.
Yeah. And it's definitely historic, content around.
And a really important part of the community fabric.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
It's been an institution. I mean, they used to start the good and the good parades there. So it has a lot of.
Well, that community is clearly very engaged. I mean, that community meeting was robust.
Yeah.
I think of all the damage that governmental institutions have done to Albina over the years. I think we need to be really attentive to the damage that this relocation is doing. And I think part of the intense desire to keep a school in the catchment area stems from wanting to keep Albina, and we also don't want to prioritize the wrong thing for the community, right? In our attempts to adjust, we really also need to be listening.
And it'll be very ironic because the Whitaker and Tubman used to be rivals.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember that. Well,
It's very ironic that we're talking about putting it over.
Right? They're
over
taking
there.
over, they won.
Yeah,
We're
right.
in school and we're moving your.
Right.
Wow.
That's pretty ironic that.
Yeah.
They used to be first rivals with Tubman, which is hilarious.
So you went to Whitaker?
Yeah.
And how would you feel about Tubman being there?
Director Collins isn't sure.
Oh, man.
Put you on the spot.
Maybe it's for our kids, and that's what I just keep coming back to,
What's the best for our kids?
It's right, it's about our kids and it's about making sure that they get every resource that they need, regardless of where their physical location of the building is. So, I think we would embrace them, maybe we have to change the name, tell them Whitaker or something. We would embrace
I think what you said there is really important of like, our kids need to have the full resources
Yeah.
for an excellent education, not only no matter where the school is located, but no matter where they live in the
Right.
city. They need to have access to that, which I think is why we get into that stress around the catchment area. Because
Yeah.
trying to make sure kids have easy access to high quality education, right?
Yeah.
It's important. So I think that's the work we have to do of listening to that community and really hearing where is the best worst option for this? Because I mean, again, I wish we had this perfect piece
I know, I do
of
too.
parkland that we could
Right.
just take over and have it be.
But we are engaging.
Okay, awesome.
Well, and I know people have mentioned Boys and Girls Club, and could we do a co-location kind of thing with them, or some other things that, are very complex conversations with partners.
Which is great, and our challenge, of course, is the time constraint
Mix.
that we have, and so, yeah, mix, right, can you get all that?
Yeah.
And I would hope maybe that we could redefine the narrative that we're trying to do something right for Tubman, as opposed to doing something wrong for everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Somehow this should be a win-win.
Yes.
I think that's just how the communication piece, when
Yeah.
we're talking to the communities, is that, we're coming at this to help, ask for help in finding a solution, whether it's just a little panel doing, right? Coming to them saying, hey, we need some solutions for our kids over here. And whatever solution you come up with, but these are just some of the solutions we have. What is the solution? I think coming at that angle, then it's, like you said, it's not so much as what staff are going to do to your kids or how we're going to help the rest of our community.
The whole community.
Yeah.
For me, when I say the best worst option, I think that comes from my frustration about, my environmental hat is frustrated with the freeway expansion. I'm deeply frustrated with the historical inequities that were done when we put in the freeway. So that's when I say the best worst option, that's what I'm talking about, is this long-term history of disenfranchisement that this continues to be a part of. But I do think we need to be solutions oriented and rather not be, I should not be so surly, but what is the way that, given what the realities are of this moment, what is the best thing we can do for our Tubman kids and for all the kids of that neighborhood to be successful?
Quick question, did you say you was in Talkville Parks, right? Just going out here, just thinking about it right now, all right?
I'm
So,
excited.
if they just, if the talks is about Irvington Park, right, it's just a thought. And I know they've been talking about one in the winter, the site.
Yeah.
And swap. Just a thought. but-
Yeah, and we actually laid out, just so they could see proportionally, what that would look like, because we would be asking for 4 acres out of their 16. And they're gonna do a little bit of work internally, just to kind of see where the landmines might be. And then, if this looks like it's got legs, I think then it's probably a board member talking to, Carmen Rubio or that's a, Courtney will probably have to direct it and figure that out, but then I think it becomes something that conversation happens up here. And I don't know what that process is like.
So Irvington Park might be one of those 5 sites we start with.
Could be.
It's gonna be certainly on the list. So our intention, where you see the staff due diligence document, and then we're gonna have a meeting in retreat, we're gonna try to give some good time to digest this. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of different possibilities. We really want to get things down on paper, let the board see the information there, and really provide everything that we have. We're not going to have information, of course, but we'll provide everything that we have. But we anticipate that report will be one of those on the initial list to help us get down. So is that one of the 5? I don't know yet, but it's certainly on our radar.
All right, what else?
Other question?
We weren't coming today really looking for any takeaways. We want to provide information. We wanted to make the plan clear. So when these meetings start popping up on the calendar, people are aware of them. And obviously the deliverables are going to be coming out along with things. So today was really to provide an update and be informational, but any feedback that you have, we are always happy.
All right. Courtney, do you have any other words of wisdom to update us on where we are with the capital stack and getting money?
Yeah, Courtney, all eyes are on you.
Words of wisdom. I don't think so, but no, I think we're in a good place. We have a lot of conversations to have in the next little while here. We've been having them, but there's just now's when people start to pay attention, because we're getting closer to February, and there's been some leadership changes, and we'll continue to learn new information about who's going to run Ways and Means over the long term, and specifically in February, if that's not the same person. So we're just kind of waiting, and we're in wait and see mode in terms of leadership. They did nominate a new Speaker of the House. The full House will have to vote on that on the 1st of February, but generally I think those are at this point a formality, those votes. and that's Dan Rayfield. We've had initial conversations with him about all of this because he was the co-chair of the Ways and Means prior to his nomination to be speaker. And the governor's office is, really supportive and has been having a lot of conversations themselves. So yeah, we're just talking to a lot of people, and I do think, there will become a time here soon where we will want to really lean on some board members to help with some of these conversations. So stay tuned for more.
Any sense, Courtney, of when is the session just the month of February? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it goes from, good question. It's 5 weeks. So it starts February 1st and it's constitutionally required to end by the 7th. I think that's right. That's the five weeks. So yeah, it's unclear what part of session, things will really get going, but generally these big funding decisions don't happen until the end. So we'll keep you posted on kind of how things are looking, but I think right now we just need to get as many legislative champions as we can to help, communicate with other members who might not be that clued into all of this. So that's what we're doing. It's just getting, doing lots of briefings.
But the good news
And then
is
of course,
7th probably have some kind of decision.
right. And I think having, and I asked John and Dana about this, but having a little bit more of this timeline detail in our one pager will be helpful, as telling the story and explaining why we need to be doing this now, because we're backwards mapping, and it's we haven't been this clear yet about that timeline, so that'll be a really good, important addition to what we share with the legislature.
Do we have anything else before we move to public comment? Ms. Bradshaw, do we have anyone sign up for public comment?
We do, we have Nora Bowman. Nora should be moving into the panelist section right now.
And folks have 2 minutes, is that correct?
Yeah.
Hi, Nora, welcome. As you begin your public comment, we just ask that you say your first name and spell your last for us, and know that you will have 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Nora Bauman. That's spelled B like boy, A-U-M-A-N. You can use she or they pronouns with me. And I am the secretary of the PTA at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School, where my daughter Carla is in 1st grade. I'm here mostly to say that we as the PTA absolutely, of course, see the value of this opportunity to work with the legislature to get these funds for the relocation of Tubman. This is really an unprecedented opportunity at a obviously unprecedented time. Knowing the challenges of identifying a site in this very, very short timeline that we have, we, the PTA, of course, think it's critically important that there be language in the legislation that centers the needs of historically underserved communities in general and those with roots in the Albina neighborhood in particular. The state funds that PPS receives must be used in an equitable way, and the affected school communities should be fully involved in that decision-making process, as you've all been discussing in this meeting. Mostly, I just wanted to say I'm so pleased to hear today and in various meetings over the past month. We've been in a lot of them. Board members have been sharing our concerns and discussing quite often the importance of engaging and of protecting the communities that Tubman is intended to serve, communities like ours. We really appreciate the complexity of this problem and are grateful to all of you for your hard work and for your collaboration with organizations like ours. Thank you for showing up to our meetings. Thank you for coming to our campus on Friday. Thank you for listening to us every time we talk. We've heard a lot of things that we've said in this meeting, and it's wonderful to feel heard. Obviously, we are deeply impacted by whatever decision is made. Kids from our school will go to Tubman, and yeah, we just want to encourage this continued kind of open line of communication. We want to continue our conversations with you all and just express our appreciation for you all for the work that you do and for listening to us. So thank you.
Rachel, is there more public comment?
No, that.
Okay. I know we had our folks from Eames on. They didn't get to say anything. Did we need to Were they there just in case we had a question for them, or?
They're just, oh, sorry.
No, I was just deferring to you.
Oh, I was just gonna say, they're on contract with us to help support the efforts in Salem. So I don't know if Cassie or John have anything to add to what I've already said. We've been in a lot of meetings together, so hopefully I covered it, but feel free to weigh in.
You captured it well, Courtney. I'm sure Cassie was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. All covered. Thank you.
Okay, great. I just remembered you all were on there at the beginning and thought, wait a minute, we have some other guests, and maybe we should make sure they get a moment if they want to speak. All right, is there anything else that you need from us or you'd like to say to conclude this meeting? Dr. Hollis?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, well, then I adjourn this meeting of the Intergovernmental Committee.
All right.
All right, thanks everyone.
Have a good day.